You've found just stories, simple, heartfelt moments from real lives, stories that remind us how connected we all are through love, loss, and hope. Get cozy. The stories are about to begin. She ran through the rooms, hastily gathering things she could lay her hands on. Her breath was ragged. She was very nervous. Just now her boss had called, asking why she had suddenly decided to leave so abruptly. Of course, they let her go immediately, but questions rained down from everywhere. She couldn't explain anything now, and she didn't want to tell anyone anything at all. She met her future husband when she was doing her internship at an institution. Feelings flooded them suddenly, and they didn't resist them, soon getting married. After she started working somewhere else, they decided not to think about children for now. She had only just started her career, and then somehow children became less of a priority, although the woman hinted about it to her husband. She sank into memories, and tears of hurt and anger immediately appeared in her eyes, and all because of one of her friends. Yesterday she found out that she wasn't a friend at all. She worked part-time at the institution, staying on duty at night. Yesterday she was supposed to stay for a full day's shift, but the duty was canceled, and the woman happily rushed home to surprise her husband. But when she quietly entered the apartment, she heard a woman's laughter. "You surprise me every time. I really don't know what you'll prepare next." It was her friend's voice. And her husband replied to that woman, "You know, you always motivate me." She slowly backed away towards the front door. What she had heard was enough to understand what was happening. Sounds of kissing echoed in the room, and the woman didn't want to see what was happening. She quietly left the apartment, not locking the door behind her. She spent the night at the institution, without closing her eyes, and now she had returned home to pack her things. She wanted to disappear, and during the night she figured out exactly where. She had inherited a small house in a settlement from her grandmother. Nobody knew about it, because many years ago she had left there to live with her father in another town after her mother passed away. Only when her grandmother passed away, she went to the funeral and learned that she had left the house to her. A not bad little house, which had been empty all this time after her grandmother's passing. She decided to go there. All that remained was to gather the necessary things and documents. Nobody would find her there. The woman didn't want her husband or her former friend to find out her location. Let them think she was missing or something had happened to her. "There's no more left of my soul," she whispered softly. An hour later, everything necessary was packed. She stopped in the middle of the room, surveying the surroundings. The woman felt she would never return here again. Here she had been happy, and here she had also learned about the actions of the two people closest to her. This place was no longer her safe haven. Now it was a dirty swamp where disgusting things had happened. She felt nauseous and hurried to leave the apartment, to go nowhere. 2 days later, she was already in that settlement. Before getting on transport, she threw away her SIM card and bought a new one. The woman didn't want to be bothered by calls from her husband, that friend, or anyone else. If necessary, she would call the institution herself to let them know if she would return to work. But while she was traveling, a thought increasingly troubled her. Should she abandon her profession altogether? The actions of those close to her had pulled the rug out from under her, and the woman didn't know how to go on. She only understood that she wanted to radically change her way of life to recover. Now she was trudging along the road with a suitcase. She had arrived at the settlement by bus, but it was still a long walk to her grandmother's house. A local resident gave her a ride, but only to the right turn, and now she was making her own way to the right house. When she finally arrived, her heart immediately felt lighter. She saw her grandmother's little house, which now belonged to her. Here she would hide, and no one would hurt her anymore. She opened the creaky gate and entered the yard. The woman stood for a minute, then slowly closed the gate behind her, leaving all sorrows and anxieties behind, and stepped forward to meet a new, yet so unknown life. After 2 weeks, she gradually started to recover. During this time, the woman got acquainted with her neighbors. Everyone turned out to be quite nice people. They helped her with the house, found workers who quickly cleaned everything up. The furniture in the house was decent, and the yard was also quickly tidied up. She even started to smile because she couldn't react differently to the kindness of strangers. They didn't know her at all. To them, she was a stranger, but they did more for her in 2 weeks than could have been expected. Her wounded heart was bathed in tears, but the wounds quickly healed from such gentle treatment. And something else happened that made her realize she wouldn't be able to hide her profession. She wanted to give it up, just become some kind of farm worker. What else one could do in the settlement she didn't know, but she intended to find out. But she didn't get such an opportunity. In the morning, one of the neighbors who had helped her the most with the house dropped by. She was agitated and started speaking hurriedly. "Good morning. Please forgive me, dear, but I won't be able to help today. I urgently need to go to town. My daughter is quite sick. Her stomach had been hurting for several days, and during the night she got really bad. She's constantly vomiting, can't even drink. I'm a bit worried. And we don't have a doctor here. Since the last one left, they haven't sent another. I don't even know who to turn to. I'm terribly worried about her. She's lying there pale, breathing somehow heavily. Her eyes look wild." The woman said anxiously, "She's dehydrated. She urgently needs an IV drip. Probably ate something bad, but the intoxication needs to be relieved urgently." The neighbor threw up her hands. "You're talking about such things. Where would we get an IV drip here in the settlement? And even if we had one, nobody knows how to use it. Our locals can't even give a simple injection. And you're talking about an IV drip. We'll take her to town. That's where they'll treat her, my little darling." She immediately ran into the house for her medical bag. She had everything necessary. She had taken it just in case, although she hadn't intended to do anything like that here. She gave the girl the IV drip, and she immediately felt better. The little girl was able to drink water. By evening, she looked quite well. They didn't have to go to town. The neighbor was ready to kiss her hands. The next day, the entire settlement already knew that she was a doctor. She couldn't hide her profession. The woman realized that when the girl got better, she felt such joy. And she felt that only this activity brought her such pleasure that nothing else could. And a month later, she was already working at the local medical station, which had been empty for a long time. No doctors wanted to waste their lives sitting around in the settlement, and that's what she needed, to hide from her past life and be useful to kind and responsive people. Several months passed, and she came on a call to a girl who had had a fever for a long time. A man of pleasant appearance met her. "Hello, doctor. You don't know me yet, but I've heard enough about you. My name is... Please help my daughter." She only glanced at the man briefly, noting his beautiful eyes, but immediately pushed away extraneous thoughts. That's all I needed. The woman, of course, had been without a man for too long, but not to the extent that just one look at beautiful eyes would drive her crazy. "Lead me to her. I'll examine the girl." 10 minutes later, she was already writing prescriptions on a piece of paper. "She has bad wheezing. I'll write down the name of the medicine for you now. You'll need to go to town to buy it, and a couple of other medicines. And perhaps you could call your wife? I'll tell her how to treat the little one. I have a couple of secrets I can share. The girl will recover quickly." Silence hung in the air, and the woman looked at the man in bewilderment. He was looking at her, frowning. A minute later he said, "I don't have a wife. I'm raising the little one myself. My wife, during childbirth." He fell silent, swallowing a lump in his throat. The woman immediately looked at the blonde angel lying in bed. Her blue eyes looked at her so trustingly. She felt her heart clench in her chest. How unfair life is. She had asked her husband for a child, but he didn't want one, probably because he was having an affair with that friend. And she had dreamed so much of a child. And here before her lay a girl who had never experienced a mother's affection. And it was so painful to encounter such injustice in life. She looked at the man again, and she felt an unfamiliar feeling appear in her heart. Perhaps sympathy, perhaps anxiety, perhaps understanding of his pain. And she almost drowned in his eyes, which were looking at her so intently. "You know, I'll come every day then. I'll do everything necessary myself. You just buy the medicine, and I'll make sure the little one gets back on her feet quickly. Yes, Princess? The woman stroked the girl's head, and she smiled kindly at her. The man also smiled, and she noticed how much the father and daughter resembled each other. I don't know how to thank you. How about I come pick you up every evening so you don't have to walk here yourself? He suggested. She wanted to refuse such kindness, but immediately changed her mind. She hadn't interacted with a man in so long, and this man was so pleasant, polite, and his daughter was such a darling. What bad could happen if he came to pick her up? She would ask him about the girl. She simply wanted to talk to someone other than patients and neighbors. Okay, I'll tell you the address then, where I know where you live, the man interrupted her, and immediately fell silent. She looked at him and saw something in his eyes that confused her. A handsome man, but there had already been one such man in her life who had trampled on her heart. The woman already regretted agreeing to his picking her up, but there was no turning back. She had suggested it herself. Time passed. She was sitting on a bench in front of the house drinking fragrant tea. Strong male arms embraced her from behind, followed by a tender kiss on the cheek. The woman closed her eyes and smiled. My love, is it really your day off today? You are mine and only mine, the man whispered in her ear. She didn't have time to answer before the little girl jumped off the steps with a squeal. The man sighed. Or rather, not mine, but ours. She smiled, remembering the events of the past year. It had been the most wonderful time, because she had met true love. The man had melted her heart, and it turned out he had seen her much earlier than she had seen him, and had fallen in love at first sight. His daughter's illness had brought them together. And it had also been a difficult time, because she had to confront her past life. For his sake and the little girl's, she wanted to put a definitive end to her past relationships, and went back to where she had left her husband and former friend. As it turned out, they hadn't really looked for her. They were already living together, and signing all the documents was just a formality that had to be observed. They did everything quickly. While the woman was sorting out all her affairs, that friend wanted to talk to her, but she didn't say a word, and her ex-husband didn't even try to justify himself, only saying that life is an unpredictable thing. That was the last time she saw them. Now nothing connected her to her past life anymore. The woman could devote herself to the man she loved, whom she had met thanks to her grandmother's little house. She sighed, letting go of the remnants of unpleasant memories. She stroked the man's hand. We have so much time left that I'll have time to bore you. You are my life. I love you, and you'll never bore me, the man said, holding her tightly in his arms.